Okay, so you're ready to kind of shake things up a bit in the way you approach hiring and build a stronger team. Well, we're diving deep into Rework today. It's a book that really kind of flips the script on traditional hiring practices. So get ready for some intriguing ideas like why hiring to, quote, kill pain, not for pleasure, might be your new mantra, and why saying no to a seemingly great candidate could actually be the smartest move.
Yeah, rework really does push us to question those deeply ingrained assumptions we often have about hiring. It's about getting back to the core of what truly matters when you're building a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And the book starts off with an idea that might seem counterintuitive at first,
Mm.
before you even think about posting that job description. Try doing the job yourselves.
Yeah, it's about developing empathy by actually getting your hands dirty and doing the work. You gain a much deeper understanding of what the role truly requires and what challenges your future team member might face.
But wouldn't that be a huge time suck for a busy manager, though? I mean, who has time to add, like, server setup to their already overflowing to-do list?
That's a valid point. Rework isn't suggesting you become an expert in every single function of your business, but even a short, focused immersion can be incredibly valuable. You'll be able to write a more realistic job description, ask more insightful interview questions, and provide better guidance to your new hire once they're on board. Think about it. Have you ever had a manager who clearly didn't understand the nuances of your work? It can be so frustrating for everyone involved.
It's funny you mention that,
Okay.
because I once had a manager who insisted on micromanaging every detail of my social media strategy, even though he barely knew how to log into Facebook. Not exactly inspiring leadership, but
Oh, see your point.
like a dose of firsthand experience can
Yeah.
make you a more effective and empathetic leader for sure.
Exactly. Now, taking that a step further, Rework advocates for a hire when it hurts approach. They actually suggest holding off on hiring until the pain of not having someone in that role becomes almost unbearable.
So you're saying I shouldn't fill a role just because it's in the budget? What if I miss out on a great candidate?
Well, think about it this way. Have you ever seen a company create a position just because they had extra budget or because they thought it might be useful down the line?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen countless innovation teams pop up that seem to exist solely to brainstorm ideas that never saw the light of day.
Exactly. Rework argues that this kind of hiring for pleasure often leads to inventing work just to keep people busy. Instead, they encourage you to focus on hiring, to solve very specific pain points. It forces you to be more strategic and ensures that every new hire has a clear purpose and impact from day one.
That makes sense. It forces you to be more resourceful
Yeah.
and prioritize your needs, and maybe even challenge the assumption that bigger is always better when it comes to building a team.
It's a provocative concept, isn't it? It might even lead you to ask, could I actually be overstaffed right now? What would happen if you didn't immediately replace the next person who leaves?
Now that you mention it, there was a period at my previous company where we had a hiring freeze. And surprisingly, things didn't fall apart. People stepped up, streamlined processes, and we actually became more efficient. It made me realize that sometimes less truly is more.
And that ties into Rework's next unconventional idea, being willing to pass on even great people if there isn't a genuine need for their skills right now.
You're telling me to say no to a rock star candidate? That seems counterintuitive. Wouldn't you want to snatch them up while you had the chance?
It's tempting, right? But Rework argues that bringing someone on board without a clear role can actually be detrimental to both the individual and the company. Imagine a cocktail party full of strangers. Everyone's on their best behavior, but the conversations stay superficial, and no one really connects on a deeper level.
Oh, I've been to those parties. You leave feeling like you didn't really gain anything from the experience.
Exactly, and that's what Rework is trying to avoid. They believe that hiring too quickly can create that same kind of superficiality in a workplace. Everyone's hesitant to rock the boat, afraid to challenge ideas or give honest feedback.
So you're saying a healthy team needs a bit of constructive friction.
Absolutely. You want people who feel comfortable speaking their minds, challenging assumptions, and pushing each other to do better. And that's hard to cultivate when someone is brought in just to fill a space or because they look good on paper.
That makes a lot of sense. I've definitely experienced workplaces where people were afraid to speak up,
Yeah.
and it stifled creativity and progress. So if you're not hiring for pleasure and you're willing to pass on great people, how do you even begin to evaluate candidates? I mean, the traditional resume is still pretty much the standard, right?
That's where Rework really throws a curveball. They have some strong opinions on resumes, to say the least.
They basically call them ridiculous,
Yeah.
right?
Pretty much. They see resumes as exaggerations and vague claims that don't really reveal much about a candidate's genuine interest or potential. Instead, Rework places a much higher value on the cover letter.
Wait, really? The cover letter's making a comeback. I thought those were going the way of the dinosaur.
Well, Rework believes that a well-crafted cover letter can reveal a lot more about a candidate's personality, communication skills, and true understanding of your company.
Interesting. So what should you be looking for in a cover letter beyond just making sure it's not riddled with typos?
The key is personalization. A generic cookie-cutter cover letter is a huge red flag. It shows that the candidate hasn't taken the time to understand your company or tailor their message to the specific role. Instead, look for evidence of genuine interest, specific examples of how their skills align with the position, and clear, concise writing that demonstrates their ability to communicate effectively.
So it's not just about saying all the right things, but about how they say them.
Exactly. Rework even goes as far as saying that someone sending out hundreds of resumes is a warning sign, not a sign of ambition. It suggests a lack of focus and a scattershot approach, rather than a genuine passion for a particular field or company.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers game when you're job hunting, but quality always trumps quantity. So if the resume isn't the be-all and end-all, what other traditional hiring practices does Rework challenge?
Well, one of their biggest critiques is the obsession with years of experience. They argue that the learning curve flattens out pretty quickly, and that after the first year or two, it's more about individual dedication, personality, and intelligence.
That's a relief to hear, because I think we've all felt held back by the 5 years of experience required dilemma at some point in our careers.
Absolutely. And think about how arbitrary those requirements often are. What constitutes experience anyway? Is it just time spent in a specific role? Or could it include personal projects, freelance work, or even just a deep passion for learning new things?
It definitely makes you question those rigid criteria. Have you ever encountered someone incredibly talented who didn't fit the traditional years of experience mold?
Oh, countless times. One of the most innovative engineers I ever worked with was completely self-taught. He had a portfolio of personal projects that blew everyone away.
And he learned more in his first 6 months on the job than some people learned in years of formal training. It's a reminder that potential can be found in the most unexpected places.
And that ties into Rework's next bold statement. Forget formal education. They actually encourage hiring managers to look beyond traditional degrees and qualifications.
It's a controversial viewpoint, but they make a compelling case. They argue that traditional education isn't the only path to success, and that relying too heavily on academic credentials can actually limit your pool of talent. They cite some pretty surprising statistics too, right?
Yes. For example, did you know that 90% of CEOs in top U.S. companies didn't graduate from Ivy League schools? More of them graduated from the University of Wisconsin, and then from Harvard. It really challenges the notion that an elite education is a prerequisite for leadership.
That's amazing. I think we've all bought into the myth that you need a fancy degree to get ahead, but Rework is saying that talent and drive can trump credentials any day.
Exactly. And they go even further, suggesting that too much time in academia can actually be detrimental in the real world. They argue that academic environments can sometimes instill habits that don't translate well to a fast-paced, results-oriented workplace.
Like what?
Well, they use writing as an example. They say academic writing often prioritizes length over clarity and a formal tone over a conversational one. This can lead to convoluted communication that hinders collaboration and slows down progress.
I never thought about it that way. But it's true. I can definitely see how some of those academic writing habits have crept into my professional life, and it hasn't always been helpful.
I think we've all been there. Rework encourages us to unlearn some of those ingrained lessons from the academic world and embrace a more clear, concise, and human-centered communication style.
It's about getting to the point and connecting with your audience on a real level, whether you're writing an email, presenting an idea, or just having a conversation with a colleague.
Absolutely. So if formal education isn't the be-all and end-all, what qualities should we be prioritizing in candidates?
Well, Rework has some pretty specific ideas about that, which we'll dive into right after this.
One of the qualities Rework champions is the ability to be self-directed. They call these individuals managers of one.
I love that term. It really captures the essence of what they're describing.
Yeah.
So what exactly does a manager of one look like in action?
Okay, imagine a marketing team member who proactively identifies a new social media platform, researches its potential, and develops a pilot campaign without needing constant guidance, or a customer service rep who not only solves a customer's problem but also anticipates their future needs and proactively offers solutions.
Those are great examples. It's about taking ownership and being proactive rather than waiting for someone to tell you what to do.
Exactly. These are the individuals who empower teams and free up leadership to focus on the bigger picture. They don't need constant supervision or hand-holding. They're resourceful, driven, and able to navigate ambiguity and make decisions independently.
So how do you identify these self-directed superstars during the hiring process? Because it seems like it goes beyond just asking, are you a self-starter in an interview?
You're right. It's about looking for evidence of self-direction in their past experiences. Have they started their own side projects, taken on leadership roles in volunteer organizations, freelanced or consulted? These are all good indicators that they're comfortable taking ownership and working independently.
It's about looking for that entrepreneurial spirit, even if they haven't technically started their own business.
Precisely. Now, another quality Rework emphasizes, and this might surprise you, is the importance of writing skills. They argue that strong writing skills are essential in any role, not just those that are traditionally considered writing intensive.
They have that great line. Clear writing is a sign of clear thinking.
Yeah, it's so true. They believe that strong writing skills indicate strong communication skills, empathy, and the ability to problem solve effectively. If you can articulate your ideas clearly and concisely in writing, you're more likely to be able to do the same in person, whether you're collaborating with a team, presenting to a client, or just explaining a complex concept to a colleague.
It makes you wonder, are writing skills being undervalued in today's job market?
Yeah, it's a good question. Think about how much of our communication now happens in written form. Emails, Slack messages, project proposals, social media posts. It's become a foundational skill that can truly make a difference in any profession.
And speaking of foundational skills, Rework was way ahead of its time in embracing remote work and hiring the best talent, regardless of location.
Yes, the book was written back in 2010 when remote work was still a relatively new concept for many companies, but the authors saw the potential of building a geographically diverse team and accessing a global pool of talent.
It's interesting how much the world of work has changed in the past decade or so. Remote work was once considered a perk, and now it's almost becoming the norm for many industries.
It's a fascinating shift, and Rework anticipated many of the benefits we're seeing now, such as access to a wider talent pool, increased diversity, and the ability to work with people across different time zones.
But they also acknowledge the challenges of managing a remote team, right?
Of course, things like communication, collaboration, and building trust can be more difficult when you're not all in the same physical space.
So how do you overcome those challenges and make remote work truly work?
Rework offers some practical tips like establishing clear communication protocols, using the right tools and technology, and making time for virtual team-building activities to foster a sense of connection and camaraderie.
Those virtual coffee breaks or online team-building games can make a big difference in combating that sense of isolation that some remote workers feel.
Absolutely. It's about being intentional and proactive in creating a strong remote work culture, one that prioritizes communication, transparency, and trust.
And I think one of the most important things is to trust your team members, give them the autonomy to manage their own time and work independently, rather than trying to micromanage them from afar.
Couldn't agree more. Micromanaging is a recipe for disaster, especially with a remote team. It erodes trust and stifles creativity.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits and challenges of remote work, but what about the impact on company culture? It seems like it would be harder to build a strong culture when everyone is scattered across the globe.
That's a valid concern. I think it's important to be mindful of the potential pitfalls of having a fully remote team, such as the risk of isolation, communication breakdowns, and a lack of shared identity.
So how do you combat those risks and create a cohesive culture when you're not physically together?
It's crucial to create opportunities for team members to connect with each other on a personal level, even if it's just virtually encourage virtual coffee breaks, online team building games, or even just sharing fun facts or personal stories in a Slack channel.
It's about finding those little ways to build rapport and human connection even when you're not physically in the same space.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of community and belonging, even when people are physically separated. And I think it's also important to have some kind of in-person interaction, even if it's just once or twice a year for a company retreat or team offsite.
Those in-person gatherings can be incredibly valuable for building relationships, strengthening team bonds, and reinforcing company culture. It's a chance to put faces to names, have those serendipitous conversations that you don't always get online and really connect on a deeper level.
They can be game changers for remote teams. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from challenging traditional hiring practices to embracing remote work. But there's one more key takeaway from Rework that I want to highlight.
I'm all ears.
It's the idea of hiring for passion, finding people who are genuinely excited about the work they do and the company they work for.
Yes, that's a crucial point. When people are passionate about their work, they bring a different level of energy and commitment to the table.
Exactly. They're more likely to be engaged, motivated, and productive. They're also more likely to go the extra mile, come up with creative solutions, and persevere through challenges.
And that passion is contagious. It spreads throughout the team and creates a more positive and energized work environment.
So how do you identify these passionate candidates during the hiring process? Because it seems like it goes beyond just asking, what are you passionate about in an interview?
You're right. It's about asking the right questions. Questions that go beyond the typical, tell me about your strengths and weaknesses, and really delve into what makes them tick.
Like asking them about their side projects, their hobbies, or what they're most proud of in their careers.
Exactly. You want to get a sense of what truly excites them, what they geek out about in their spare time, and what kind of impact they want to make in the world.
And it's also about paying attention to their energy and enthusiasm during the interview. Do they light up when they talk about certain topics? Do they seem genuinely interested in the company? And the role those nonverbal cues can tell you a lot about a candidate's passion and fit.
It's about looking beyond the words on their resume and really trying to connect with them on a human level.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to create a work environment that fosters passion, a place where people feel valued, challenged, and empowered to do their best work.
So it's not just about finding passionate people. It's about creating a culture that nurtures and supports that passion.
Exactly. And that's something that Rework emphasizes throughout the book. It's about building a company that people are proud to be a part of, where they feel like they're making a difference and where their work is aligned with their values.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of hiring for passion. But what about the other side of the coin? What about the people who are already on your team? How do you keep them engaged and motivated?
That's another great question, and it's something that Rework addresses as well. They argue that one of the best ways to keep employees engaged is to give them autonomy and ownership over their work.
So it's about empowering them to make decisions, take risks, and be creative.
Exactly. When people feel like they have a stake in the company's success and the freedom to shape their own roles, they're more likely to be invested in their work and motivated to go above and beyond.
It's about treating them like the managers of one that we were talking about earlier.
Precisely. And it's also about creating a culture of continuous learning and development, providing opportunities for employees to grow their skills, take on new challenges, and advance their careers.
Because when people feel like they're learning and growing, they're less likely to become complacent or disengaged.
Absolutely. And it's also about recognizing and rewarding employees for their contributions, whether it's a simple thank you, a public shout out, or a bonus or promotion.
It's about showing your employees that you appreciate their hard work and dedication, and that their contributions are valued.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of appreciation and recognition.
So to sum it up, keeping employees engaged and motivated is about creating a work environment that is challenging, rewarding, and supportive.
It's about giving them the tools and resources they need to succeed and the freedom to do their best work.
And it's about creating a culture where they feel valued, respected, and appreciated.
Absolutely. And I think Rework does a great job of highlighting the importance of these factors.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from hiring to culture to employee engagement, but there's one more important aspect of building a successful team that I want to touch on.
I'm all ears.
It's the idea of diversity and inclusion.
Ah, yes. That's a crucial topic, and it's something that's becoming increasingly important in today's workplace.
Because when you have a team that is diverse in terms of race, gender, age, experience, and background, you bring a wider range of perspectives, ideas, and experiences to the table.
Exactly, and that leads to better decision-making, more innovative solutions, and a more inclusive and welcoming work environment for everyone.
So how do you build a more diverse and inclusive team? Because it seems like it goes beyond just saying, we value diversity on your website.
You're right. It starts with being intentional about your hiring practices, expanding your recruiting efforts to reach a wider pool of candidates, and making sure your job descriptions and interview questions are inclusive and unbiased.
It's about removing those barriers that might unintentionally exclude qualified candidates from certain backgrounds.
Exactly. And it's also about creating a company culture that values diversity and inclusion at every level.
Where everyone feels safe, respected, and supported, regardless of their background.
Precisely. And that means being proactive and addressing issues of bias and discrimination and creating a culture of accountability where everyone is responsible for fostering a more inclusive workplace.
So building a diverse and inclusive team is not just the right thing to do.
It's also the smart thing to do.
It's good for business, it's good for your employees, and it's good for society as a whole.
Absolutely. And I think Rework touches on these themes in a subtle but important way.
They emphasize the importance of hiring for talent and potential, regardless of background, and they encourage companies to create a work environment where everyone can thrive and contribute their best work.
It's about recognizing that talent and brilliance can be found in the most unexpected places, and that a diverse team is a stronger team.
And that a company that embraces diversity and inclusion is a company that's more likely to innovate, adapt, and succeed in today's rapidly changing world.
Couldn't agree more. You know, it's been really fascinating unpacking all these unconventional hiring practices from Rework. It really highlights how sometimes we get so caught up in the process that we lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah, it's like we've created this elaborate system of resumes, interviews, and assessments. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that we're dealing with actual human beings.
It's so true. You know, we can become so focused on checking boxes and finding the, quote, perfect candidate on paper that we overlook the importance of passion, personality, and cultural fit.
Right. Rework reminds us to strip away all that unnecessary complexity and just focus on finding the right people for the job, regardless of whether they fit a predefined mold or have a certain number of years of experience.
Yeah, it's about looking beyond the credentials and really trying to understand what makes someone tick, what motivates them, and how they might contribute to your team's unique dynamic.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most unconventional candidates can bring the most innovative ideas and fresh perspectives to the table.
And that a team composed of diverse individuals with different backgrounds, experiences, and ways of thinking is ultimately a stronger and more resilient team.
For sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Rework, what's one key takeaway that you hope our listener will walk away with?
I think the most important message is to be bold and challenge the status quo. Don't be afraid to question conventional wisdom and experiment with different approaches to hiring. What works for one company might not work for another. And the only way to find what truly works for you is to try new things and be open to learning from your experiences.
It's about trusting your instincts, being willing to take risks, and not being afraid to go against the grain if it means building a team that's truly exceptional.
Absolutely. And remember, building a great team is an ongoing process. It requires constant attention, effort, and a willingness to adapt and evolve as your company grows and changes.
So keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep building those amazing teams.
And don't forget to check out Rework for yourself. It's full of actionable advice and inspiring insights that can help you rethink your approach to hiring and build a company that people love to work for.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.